Terry, I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is June 6, 2016. My home group's the Tampa Young People's Group. We meet Thursday nights in downtown Tampa at 7:30. I've got a sponsor who's here. Sponsor a bunch of guys. Some of them are here. Most of them because I threatened them this week. I think I'm like Luke. I like been on this like local speaker circuit the last month, and a bunch of these guys haven't showed up once, and I was like, listen, so they showed up tonight, and I was a little sad earlier because there was one guy that was going to come, and he didn't come, and as this meeting was starting and all the clapping was going on, I was sad because this guy's missing what we have here, right? Like what this group has. And this group reminds me so much of my home group. I absolutely adore you guys. I love you guys so much. So that said, I'm going to try to stick to the no cussing thing. If I don't, you can talk to Chris after the meeting. And I'm going to try to take it easy on the interpreter lady here. But she's going to be working tonight. Smoke coming off those hands for sure. I want to thank Darian for opening up. She's been a little sassy this week, so I had this planned. And I'm not the guy to get into like a little prank back and forth with. I'm creative. And thank you guys for indulging me, letting your group be my playground, So, no, I love Darian so much. She didn't have a year when she moved in. It was way less than that, and it was very obvious. We do this thing in Tampa where the night before your 1-year anniversary, we throw a party. We call it a watch. We watch you until midnight to make sure you don't get drunk. And man, we played Darian's like entire DUI video for everybody. The screensaver on the TVs in the house, every TV in the house was her mugshot for months. And she didn't like that. But it's amazing what a newcomer can do in your life. We're going to cry tonight. Just let's get that out of the way, right? There's going to be some crying going on from up here. I got my snake skins on to look tough, but that's where it ends, right? So, you get a newcomer in your life and like something just like, it flips, right? It flips in your head or in your heart or something. I got to adjust. We have a guy, Jeff. He adjusts the microphone at our home group. Just saying. Jeff would have fixed that problem a long time ago. I was talking about something. So, yeah, we got this girl on our couch, right? And Darian hasn't come outside of her room in 15 months that she's been there, or however long it's been there. We just hear her stomping back and forth to the bathroom. And Darian's outside like all the time, spending time with that girl, keeping her occupied. And it reminds me of a saying that we have a responsibility to entertain the newcomer until they can get the message, And I get to see that right in my home. All I got to do is come downstairs, right? And I get to see it happen on a daily basis. I'm overpaid, right? That I get to have that kind of front row seat to this stuff going on. And this is stuff that was not possible for me, right? The life that I have today was like it wasn't even in my most, creative imagination, the things that go on in my life today. And, I was just this little angry kid, right? Like angry at everything all the time. And I had 100 reasons why and like justifications, and I could tell you my problems. And, I'd get off the school bus every day, turn around and punch the first kid that stepped off behind me, and like, it didn't matter why. I'd make some stuff up later to justify it. But, I ran around like that, and I had all this stuff going on at home that I could tell you like made me different and not as good, and why I'm never going to be anything. And I'll tell you what, man, I was a senior in high school, and the only place I felt comfortable was playing sports. And I was a middle linebacker on the football team, and all my friends were like doing cool stuff, like having girlfriends, and I'm on like AOL Instant Messenger, like got a girlfriend in Kentucky. She sends me pizzas and stuff, and turns out she was like 300 pounds and didn't have a job, and it was fun, sorry. I wanted a real girlfriend like they had a real girlfriend. So I got the idea to bring like some drinks to this house party and like get a, JV cheerleader drunk and, make it easy. That's not weird, but I show up and I'm slinging these Smirnoff Ices, man. And this dude like looked over and he's like, "That's kind of weird. You're not drinking, are you?" And I was like, "No, why?" And he's like, that's weird, right?" And today I agree. At the time I was like, "No, this is tactical." I'll tell you what, man. Like I opened one of them Smirnoff Ices, and I took a sip out of that thing, and it was delicious. You know, it's like a Capri Sun, right? And with bubbles. And I just started drinking. You know, I want to tell you it was a whole lot of them because I got an ego. And but it probably wasn't. And I'll paint the picture for you. I was leaving that party, and I'm cool. So I got like baggy jeans and, you know, a wife beater and a do-rag on, and I'm smoking a Black Mild. And I got like 50 Cent, Many Men, you know, bumping on the radio, drinking my Smirnoff Ice. And I like looked in the side view mirror and I saw myself and I was like, yeah, tonight's the night, dude, you look good, you know? And that's like the first instance of hope that I can like recall in my life, right? That's the first time that things were looking up, was in that moment. And like now, if I saw that guy, I would be like, oh my God, dude, you have no idea how not good you look, you know? But I actually like saw a picture from that era recently and was like, oh, what were you doing? You know? And but I'll tell you what I was doing. I was trying to escape, man. I was just trying to feel different. I was trying to feel better, you know? And you know, it went from Friday night after the game to Friday and Saturday. And about 6 months after my first drink, it's on Tuesday night during the exams. Dom, don't you dare take my seat. Hey, Dom. Glad you joined us. You know, it was like on a Tuesday night during like exams in high school, you know. And somebody pointed out that was weird, and I didn't see it that way. But, you know, I'm just like drinking by myself now, you know. And I get out of high school, and I find out that good people leave their cars unlocked at night, and they leave like change in the center console and stuff like that. So I just start popping door handles and taking change, you know. And every once in a while I'll take a head unit, and if you've got the garage open, I'll take your golf clubs and, you know, whatever, man. I'm just taking it all, dude. I'm throwing it in the back of a stolen Camaro that my friend showed up with. And we go to Steak and Shake at 5 a.m, and that's my meal for the day. And then we would pawn all that stuff and go to Albertsons, if you remember Albertsons, right? And get a plastic bottle of vodka. And, you know, we'd suck back that bottle of vodka, and, you know, the buzz would wear off, and I got to go break into some cars, you know, and like just do it again. And, you know, and by the end of the summer, and if you ask me, it's just like, dude, I'm 18. I'm just doing 18-year-old stuff. What do you mean, you know? And at the end of that summer, almost a year on the mark from my first drink, my mom and I get in a fight over my drinking. And my mom is in and out of like psych wards and detoxes and stuff like that. So I'm like, who are you to question my drink, you know? And I said some things, she said some things, she put her hands on me, I put my hands on her, and I said some more things, and 2 days later she killed herself, you know? And now it was like, bro, you would do this too, right? Like, don't question my behavior. You would be doing this same exact thing, right? And now I'm starting to go in and out of the court system and jail, and find out I got a kid on the way, and I'm like, oh, that's not good. That's like a really bad idea. Like, you shouldn't do that, you know? And she thought that we were going to get married and live happily ever after as just a trashy ghetto little family in Palm Harbor, you know? And I couldn't even do that, man, you know? And the kid was born, and I remember holding him, and this was like the second moment of hope. It was like a moment of clarity of like, I want to be a good father. I truly, deep down, man. You put me on a lie detector, I want to be a good father. And I'm going to get my life together. I'm going to like go get a job, a real one, you know, and like maybe see a therapist or something like that. Maybe go to school. I don't know, but I'm going to like start in that direction. And it ain't but a couple weeks later, I got 6 felonies on me, right? I'm back in the jails, you know. And I relate to the ankle monitor. I had ankle monitors, and it took me like almost 5 years to do 3 years of probation because I'm smart, you know. And, you know, I'm like in and out of this kid's life. I can't show up, and I figured out the problem. It like dawned on me one night, like Tampa is what's wrong, and I just need to get out of Tampa, you know. And I had some family up in the Philadelphia area. I lived there when I was a little kid, so I shot up to Philly. I got on Craigslist, and I rented a room with 3 doctorate students at an Ivy League university. And I show up with my duffel bags of clothes, and they were like, "Oh no," you know. And I could talk, man. I could talk to judges. I could talk to anybody but girls, right? You know. And I talk my way into jobs all the time, and I talk my way into this, you know, this brownstone, and you know, in West Philly. And I get there, and I'm like, all right, we're gonna turn it around here. This is it. And I go to work, and the guy's confused. He's like, did you relocate for work? Because you're a busboy. I don't understand what's happening here, And I told this cat the truth. I was like, man, my drinking's out of control. Tampa's just too much, And he was like, I'll do anything I can to help you. And I was like, that's really sweet. And at the end of the night, they pulled us in the office and they gave us our tip out. And I had $100-something bucks in cash. And I looked at him and I said, where do we drink? And he was just perplexed. It had been mere hours that I was here to get my life together. And now I want to go drink. And, he took me to this joint called Oscar's Tavern. Whew, boy, I loved Oscar's Tavern. I walked in, and it's like a cloud of smoke, hot dogs on the roller grill, sticky floor, girl with a broken heel, They give you a 23-ounce Yingling in a rocks glass full of Jameson for $8, They quickly taught me not to call it Yingling, it's lager, right? So I'm learning the lingo real fast. And I bellied up to that bar, and I was like, yep, I'm home. And this is where, some hints of, something's wrong start happening. The bartender IDs me, and this joker grew up with my family, right? Knew my aunt right away, grew up on the same road as my father, and I'm like, oh no, this is bad, And he said something to me that night that really threw me for a loop. He said, you drink exactly like your father. And I was 22 years old, and I'd never seen my dad drink, right? My dad was a lot of things, but didn't drink. And I called my dad the next day, and I said, hey, what's this about, And he said, yeah, that's true. And I was like, but I've never seen you drink. And he said, yeah, you were born. I stopped. And I had this flashback to that moment in the hospital holding my little boy, wanting to get my life together and not being able to. And that was the first time that I realized something's up, something's wrong here, right? And, I just can't stop, I'm doing crazy things. People are they're scared of me showing up to work, not even showing up to the bar. They just don't even want to be around me. And I get sent to AA, and everybody finds out that I get sent to AA, and I go to AA, and I walk in the room, and if you guys got clubhouses up here, you know what this scene looks like. You walk in a little bit early, and everybody's sitting around the table, and they got their coffee and their cookie, and they're laughing, and they're smiling, and they're happy, and they got their 12 steps and 12 traditions. And I walked in, and from the door, I clocked what was going on, right? I saw it, and I saw God, higher power, God. And I was like, nah, this ain't for me. And I turned around and I walked out. And that was my experience with Alcoholics Anonymous. So I went to work, and I told everybody, I go to Alcoholics Anonymous now, right? And I can't drink with you people, And they would go to Oscar's Tavern after work, and I stumbled into this bar in a part of town. I might need Jeff's help on this to verify this is true. There's a part of Philadelphia called the Gayborhood, right? And I just would go drink in these gay bars in the Gayborhood because I knew nobody from work was coming there. You know what I mean? And they were sweet, man. They were real nice to me. They would leave me alone. They knew what was up. They knew I was an alcoholic hiding out from something. And they would just give me drinks. The guys would buy me drinks, which I thought was even better, right? I don't care. And then around a month, that guy that was there at my first shift up there that told me he would do anything to help me, he said, hey, you got about a month, right? And I said, you're exactly right. It's been a month. And he said, did you get a chip? And I said, a what? And he was like, a chip, a 30-day chip. And I was like, no, it's not that kind of AA. You wouldn't understand, That sucker had been to AA. He knew about it, and he was waiting. He was waiting to drop the hammer on me, and he had me. So I just went to Oscars that night, gigs up. Just kidding, guys, And, man, it just got worse. I just couldn't get it to stop. And every night I would come up with a plan. Every night. And every morning I would wake up with a promise. I'm not going to do it again. I don't want to do it. I don't know what I did last night, but I know it probably wasn't good. And I don't want to do it again tonight. And hey, I'm coming home. We're watching a movie. I'm cooking dinner. I can't cook, right? I eat one meal a day that somebody gives me for free. That's it. I can't cook. And but I'm going to cook tonight, and we're going to watch a nice movie and hang out with the dogs, and it's going to be real nice and quiet. And then I get to work, and I figure it out. I figure out what went wrong last night. I took too much money in the bar. I was hanging out with Joe. Shouldn't hang out with Joe. Had too much of that Jameson, right? Whatever. I figure out what variable to tweak tonight and make this thing work, and it just didn't. Every night it was the same story. Every morning it was the same feeling. And it was just sad, right? I want to tell you cool, extravagant stories. But it was just sadness and loneliness and despair, frustration, just, wanting to give up. And I started trying to take the route my mom took, and it's not working for me, you know? Like, I just can't get up out of here, dude. I keep waking up, you know? And eventually I wind up back in Tampa, and call my mom's best friend, Aunt Sue. And Aunt Sue didn't answer. Uncle Joe answered. And Uncle Joe's like, what's going on, man? What's wrong? And I told him exactly what was wrong. That I needed a better job. I needed some money in the bank to get back on my feet. I needed my driver's license back. I needed a better job. I needed my kid's mom to like chill out because she's being a little mean about me leaving for, you know, a year and a half. And, you know, I need all these things. And Joe listened. And Joe said, tell me about your drinking. And I was so confused. Like, Joe, were you not hearing me, you know? And I said, there's something wrong with my drinking, man. I can't stop. I don't know what's up. And Joe said, I know what you're talking about. And Joe told me about the way he drinks. And if you see Joe, Jess probably got a picture of Joe. If you see Joe, he looks like he drinks the way I drink, right? He looks like the dad from that show where the dad and the son made motorcycles and threw stuff and yelled at each other. He's like the dad's doppelganger. It's crazy. And he's telling me about his drinking, and I'm like, I believe you, 100%. And then he told me that it got so bad he went to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that when he got there, they told him to get a sponsor, so he got a sponsor. And his sponsor told him to get a home group, so he got a home group. And the home group told him to do service, so he did service. And then the sponsor told him about the steps, so he took the steps. And then the sponsor asked him to carry the message to another alcoholic, so he carried the message. And he had been sober for 29 years. And I was like, wow, Joe, I felt hope. Like, I felt like, okay, maybe there is an answer. And I said, Joe, that sounds awesome, man, but I don't think we have AA in Tampa yet. Joe laughed just like that. And the reason Joe laughed just like that is because when Joe came down here to bury my mom, Joe disappeared every night, like 7 o'clock. And I figured he was going to the bar because he looks like he's going to the bar. And Joe rattled off this address. He said, go to 3333 West Columbus. It's a little clubhouse we have in Tampa. And he said, somebody will be there. If not, just wait. And when you see somebody there, tell them that you need help. 3333 West Columbus was about 8 minutes from my house. He knew exactly where I needed to go because Joe went there when he was going through one of the hardest times. Joe gave me the blueprint. There were no questions, right? There was no questions left. It was just show up and ask somebody for help. Problem was I still had some booze left and I just wasn't ready, man. And a week later I ended up detoxing on the floor of a jail cell in South Carolina. Not real sure how or why I was there. There was a high-speed motorcycle chase, which is cool, you know, but it's about as cool as it got, you know, and they're telling me, like, it's 3 counties, you know. They want 10 years, and I'm like, all right, here we go. You know, I'm doing some good stuff now, you know. Like, this is impactful. And, but, man, I'll tell you what, all I could think about was Joe. The whole time. I just couldn't get Joe and AA out of my head. And I'm writing letters, you know. I'm going to AA when I get out of here, you know. And I got lucky. I got blessed again. I'm like good at talking to judges. And I talked this judge into giving me a 10-year suspended sentence. If they caught me back in South Carolina, I'd do the 10 years. I just had to get out of the state, which is a great deal, dude. That place sucks, you know. So I get up out of South Carolina, and I'm not drinking. I'm going to AA. I'm coming to meet you guys, you know. About 24 hours later, I'm drunk as a skunk in downtown Tampa outside of the hub, peeing on the door, screaming, don't you know who I am? They had no idea who I was, you know? I'm just another drunk. And I wake up in a bathtub the next morning and I just don't know what to do, man. You know, and there was a scene that I saw the saddest scene of my life play out before my eyes that night when I took that drink. My sister, when I came home, my sister was having this big, swanky, fancy birthday party, right? It's in like a high-rise condo building. You know, there's decorations, a DJ, lights, the whole thing. And I'm there, and my friends are there to like welcome me home. And everybody's like excited that Terry's not drinking. And I tell the bartender, like, hey man, no matter what, don't get me booze, you know? And he's like, gotcha, you know? And I don't know what happened, man. A couple hours in, I was walking to that bar to get a Coke, and I said 2 Bud Lights. And he was like, you're the guy, right? And I was like, don't worry about it, man. Let's get this over with, you know? And boom, next thing you know, I'm in a bathtub and I don't know what to do. And what had happened is when I got those 2 Bud Lights, I turned around and I watched all those friends that came to welcome me home. I watched them walk out the door. They didn't say a word. They had a plan and they stuck to it, right? They had like talked about it. I felt so attacked, like they just like protected themselves from me, right? Because I'm an animal. I will take everything you have if you let me within 10 feet of you, That's how I lived. And so I wake up and I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I'm sleeping on the street. And my dad hears about it. And my dad scoops me off the street one last time, coming to save his baby boy. And he put me in this little motel off of Kennedy. He said, you got a week here. Don't call me until you get your life together. And I could tell he meant business this time. It was like serious. He was like bothered. And I was like, can I get some walking around money or something, Dad? No. And somebody had saved a box of clothes. They threw away the underwear and socks for some reason, but there was a box of clothes, this little box of clothes. And I'm in the hotel room with the box of clothes, just pacing, just walking back and forth all night. Don't drink, don't drink, don't drink. And I had gotten this job with this guy that had hired me back 100 times. He's paying me less than I'd ever made in my life. And I'm going to work and going to the hotel and pacing, don't drink, don't drink, don't drink. And on day 3, I'm about to jump out of my skin. I can't keep going, And I pick up that hotel phone, and this is back in July 2009. I hadn't gotten a cell phone yet, so I didn't know, saving contacts, so, that wasn't a thing. I dialed a phone number, I called it every day, and it was this cat that had gotten sober when we were about 20 years old, and we made fun of him for it, We were like, oh, he went to AA? Nerd, And I dialed his phone number, and he answered, and he said, what's up, man? How are you? And I said, I'm doing great. I need to get sober. And he was like, do you need to get sober or do you want to get sober? And I was like, what? Okay. What are you talking about, dude? I'm in a motel calling you. You decide, And he's like, cool, I'll call you back, And he didn't call back. A couple hours went by, so I made plans. I had a date that night, She was coming over. She had high standards. And he shows up. The guy just parks outside, right? And he's got this really annoying smile on his face. He's, And I was like, what do you want? And he's like, I want to show you something. Come with me. And I was like, yeah, but I made plans. And he's like, just come with me. I'm like, where are we going? He's like, just come with me. I want to show you something. Finally, I knew he wasn't going to leave. So I just got in the car. And he took me to a Club Yana on a Sunday night. And we walked in about 10 minutes late. And there's this old dude from Kentucky in bib overalls just up there laying it down, baby. Speaking my language. He said he used to look for girls with puke on their shirt. And I was like, yes. And he talked about being in and out of jail. And I was like, yeah, I get that. And he talked about, is it Raj that told the story about the turkey? He got a card that he won a free turkey in the mail. And he went to get the turkey, and Raj didn't win no damn turkey. He had a warrant out for his arrest, and he got him, And I was like, I can't pass up a good turkey, Get it, Raj. And then he talked about being in his jail cell with this guy, and this guy inviting him to pray with him. And Raj getting on his knees and praying with this guy and feeling the presence of God. And I was out. That was it. That was the last thing I heard, And then at the end of the meeting, they did the chips. And I was like, chips are for you guys, I get it. You have a problem. I'm here to find some social drinking buddies. And the guy that took me to the meeting pushed me out of my seat, fall on the floor, pushed me out of my seat. And I was like, that's not okay. And I got up and I took a white chip, and I had no idea what I was doing. If you took a white chip tonight and you don't know what you were doing, good. Keep it that way. Don't know what you're doing, right? And I took that white chip and didn't know what I was doing. And then at the end of the meeting, they stood up and they got in a circle. And the people next to me, they grabbed my hands. And I was like, why are you touching me, bro? You don't do that, And then they started to pray this prayer out of the Bible. And I was like, I knew it. You got me into your Jesus cult. Yep, I knew it. And then at the end of the prayer, they did a cheerlead for God. They chanted. And I was like, oh, God, no, get me out of here. I'm out. I'm done. I'm not doing it. Take me back to the street. It's better over there, And, man, I'm standing out in the end of the parking lot just looking tough, you know, you don't want to talk to me. And these dorks ran up on me. They didn't care. These nerds, you know, like, hey, I'm Lloyd, and I'm Ryan, and I'm Ryan, you know. And I'm like, yeah, there's 2 Ryans. That's good, you know. And do you have a sponsor? And I'm like, no, dude, you know. How long are you sober? I'm like, I don't know, man, you know, like, where do you work? And they're asking me all these questions. I'm like, what do you want? You know, like, what's going on? I don't have any money for you, man, you know. And then they're like, you want to go visit our friend? And I'm like, not really, you know, but like, I don't think I have a choice, you know. So we get in the car, and there's 5 of us in this little BMW, and they got death metal blaring on the radio, and they're talking about the allergy and the phenomenon of craving and Cirky Pa and Ficky Pa, and I'm like, what the hell is happening, you know? And they took me to the hospital to see this guy who had been in a vicious moped accident, shattered his femur, and I'm like, guys, what? Come on, man. Like, this can't be real life, you know? And the deal was that the Ryans and Lloyd and Stan had all been sober for a few years. And I didn't believe them. I thought that, like, they had, like, a weekend pass, you know? Or they, like, smoked some reefer or something like that, you know? But the guy in the hospital bed was sober for 6 months, and I could get my head around 6 months. And I was like, hey, what'd you do? And it's crazy. He said the same thing Joe said. I got a sponsor, I got a home group, I took the steps, I got a service position, I help other people. I was like, okay, I still not looking good here, right? But I hear you, you know? And they took me back to the motel, and I paced the room that night. And they took me to a meeting the next night, and one of my ex-flings was there, and she was sober for 10 months, and I was like, oh, she can stay sober. I can stay sober for sure. I'm going to show her, you know? And she did not care that I was there, you know? And I'm like, she's going to notice me, you know? Man, I don't know. Like, they just started showing up. Lloyd would be outside of my job that I didn't tell him where it was at, you know? And I'd be like, what do you want? He's like, we're going to a meeting. I'm like, I went to a meeting yesterday. He's like, cool, we're going to one today. And I'm like, no. He's like, I got cigarettes. I'm like, yeah, all right, let's go. You know, where are we going? We're going to Lakeland. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's Tuesday, you know? And he's taking me to the Lakeland Young People's Group of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know? And they're just like, back then, it was just like this group. They're excited about sobriety, you know? You got a home group? Did you get a sponsor? You know, I'm like, yeah, I got a sponsor. Because me and the sponsor were sitting at a table at Starbucks at midnight by ourselves. And he asked me 23 times if I had a sponsor. So I finally said, like, all right, you want to be my sponsor? You know? And he asked me some really stupid questions. Like, can you follow direction? I said, yes, you know? And he said, are you willing to go to any lengths to achieve sobriety? And I was like, I know you want me to say yes. So yeah. You know, and then they tested it on Thursday. They brought me to my home group, and at the end of the meeting, if you're new tonight, don't say this to anybody. I said, is there anything I can do to help? And they said, yes. And we met in a gymnasium, full court basketball, right? And it's carpet. And they said, vacuum the floors. And I said, I knew it. Slave labor. That's what this is about. And I ran over, we have this service table where if you want to get involved in our group, you go see these people, and they plug you into the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I run over to that service table, and I'm like, is my sponsor allowed to tell me to vacuum the floor? And Ryan goes, yeah. And I was like, you know, and I'm vacuuming this floor, and I'm just mad, you know? But I took a break from being mad, because I, like, was paying attention to vacuuming the floor, and now I was mad at all of these heathens in the meeting, just leaving their popcorn and trash all over the floor, cookie crumbs everywhere, you know, spilled coffee. It's carpet, guys. What are we doing? You know? And I vacuumed that floor good. And man, I got involved in meetings, you know, and this girl was like, if you work the 12 steps, we can date. So I called my sponsor and was like, how do we work the steps? Where am I? I'm on like 6 or 7, right? I just made an amends to an ex-girlfriend. But like, so where are we? You know, and he's like, buddy, we haven't even opened the book, you know? So he comes over and we open the book and we start reading and we take the 3rd step, and I had gotten my own apartment. It was like a third of a house kind of deal. And it had 2 doorknobs, so it was hard to get into. But it was mine, you know, and I'd offered him a glass of water, and he drank the glass of water, and then I swear, like, in my memory, probably not true, he, like, looked me in the eyes and dropped a glass of water on the tile floor, and it shattered. And I was like, oh no, I only have 1 more glass, you know? But I, like, swept it up, And as soon as I swept it up, he said, let's get on our knees and say the third step prayer and turn our lives over to the care of a higher power. And I was like, dude, do we have to? You know, like really? And I did it. I said the prayer, and I didn't feel any kind of like magic wind come through the apartment, you know. And then he told me to write a 4-step, and I got mad at him at a meeting, and I threatened to stab him in the eye with a pencil, and I walked home because I'm emotionally mature at 24 years old. And I go home and I print out a worksheet from the internet on the 4-step, and I fill that sucker out, you know, and I'm like just writing, you know, I'm going to show, I'll do these steps. And I write this 4-step out, and I meet up with them at this park where there were 14,000 people on a Saturday afternoon. And he's like, tell me all the bad things, you know? And I'm like, dude, like, there's a kid sitting on the bench with me. What are we, you know, whatever. And I start laying it out, man, and I'm telling him the stuff, like, I'll tell you what, if he ever says anything about this, I'm taking him out. He's coming with me, right? Like, you can't, you know? And I got to that last one, like the one, you know, the one that you bury all the way at the end after you feel out your sponsor and you decide if you're willing to tell them or not. I'm at that one, and I look up and he's taking selfies, and I was like, we're done, you know? And he's like, that's everything? And I was like, that's it, bud, you know? And he took me over to a bench where there was like the highest concentration of children playing tag, and he was like, sit here for an hour quietly. Reflect on your relationship with your higher power and say this prayer over and over and over. And I was like, oh, okay, you know. The kids are like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm praying. You know? Why? It's like, you don't want to know, bud, you know. And you know, he had me write out the people that I had harmed, and I did. I think I was like kind of honest about it. And he said, you know, that high-speed chase you went on, you put that cop's life in danger. The guy that like had to chase you. He might not have made it to his family that night. I said, yeah. And he said, why don't you call him and make amends to him? And I was like, I was thinking like some of these exes sound better, you know? And he was like, leave them alone. Don't pour salt on the wound. They're starting to heal up from you. And I was like, no, that's not right, you know? So I get in my friend's car that night, and he's like harassing me about taking the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous so that I can have freedom from alcoholism. And he's like, call the cop. And I'm like, it's 8:30 at night, so I'm like, yeah, I got him. I'm going to call now. He ain't working, you know? And I call the Clarendon County Sheriff's Department, and I say, hey, my name's Terry, and I, you know, caught these charges on January 8th, 2009, and I don't know, you probably don't have any record of it. It wasn't a big deal. But, like, I was wondering if you could help me, like, find the cop that started the chase. And they were like, oh, yeah, we're transferring the call now. He's on duty. And I'm like, oh, no, not the plan, you know? And then, you know, officer so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, no. Hey, my name's Terry. I'm an alcoholic. You chased me on my motorcycle. Well, it was somebody else's motorcycle, but I was driving it. And it was really unfair of me to put your life in danger. That was selfish. I'm sober in AA now. And he just started crying. And I was like, yeah, I knew you were a punk, you know? No, I started crying, man. To tell you the truth, I'm an empathetic crier. If any of you start crying, I'm toast, right? So hold it together. I'm doing the crying tonight. But he started crying. He said, nobody's ever called me to apologize for the situation they put me in, man. What? And I said, I don't know, man. I'm working with the sponsor in AA. He told me to call you. I feel bad for what I did. I shouldn't have done that. And he was like, that's okay, cool, man. And then my sponsor told me, you know, your next meeting you go to, raise your hand to sponsor people. And I'm at this Halloween dance at 3333. And you guys should have seen Nikki that night. It was crazy. We were nuts. We were psychos back then, just wild. But man, we were sober and we were having fun. I love you so much. I hope you know that. But I'm at this dance, and this dude walks up, and I'm like, I know you. And he's like, I know you. We had drank together. I lived in Town and Country, and he lived up this way, and he had called me one night, and he said, I'm going to pick up a 12-pack, and I'm going to come over, and we're going to drink. And I was like, yeah, dude, let's do it. And he showed up at the house, and there was just an empty box. And I was like, what happened to the 12-pack? He's like, I drank it. And I was like, all right, dude, you shouldn't drive anymore, you know? And that guy's standing outside at 3333, and I'm catching up with him. What are you doing, man? I'm sober for 2 months in Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a sponsor. I'm taking the steps. And he said, will you be my sponsor? And I was like, yes, I don't know, you know? Sure. That guy's sitting in this room tonight, man. AA is wild. This is a wild place, man. We haven't even hit it yet. Just wait. So, you know, I'm trying to sponsor guys. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm just reading the book with them and yelling at them and, you know, put your phone away, take your hat off, you know, and all this crazy stuff. And I'm just trying to help people, man, you know. And then I go on a date with that girl. And, you know, that was terrible. We date for 2 months, and she breaks up with me and leaves me for a guy in a halfway house, and I'm offended. Like, I got my own place, you know? And shows up to our New Year's Eve dance with this guy. I'm like, the ball's on you, you know? And, you know, I'm like thinking about leaving AA because I have my heart broken, and the guys are like, just stick around, you know? And I see this girl in this little tassely skirt just shaking her thing, and I was like, okay, maybe there's hope, you know? And, a couple weeks later, she's sitting out in my backyard by herself. I had moved into a house like Darian described earlier that I live in now. Lloyd and myself and Stan and Blair and Justin, we all got this house on Davis Island, and they put me out back in the garage. It was detached, you know. New guy goes out there, and every night, man, every day, somebody was getting sober in that backyard, I swear. Somebody was like going over an inventory with the sponsor, writing down a 4-step, taking a 3rd step, you know, just... It was amazing, and we would burn stuff. We burned so much stuff. We, like, messed up the carbon footprint in Tampa for a minute. We're burning stuff you're not supposed to burn, you know? We're, like, making fires that hit the trees, and the guy that's responsible for it's a firefighter now. It's crazy. But I go out in that backyard one night, and that girl's sitting out there by herself, and I was like, you know, want to watch Boiler Room? And, you know, we were new and crazy, and that's not exactly how it happened, but it's close. And we were new and crazy, man, and we got sober together. The only like the good thing was we were both like active and interested in AA, you know. And there were a lot of bumps, and people were like, "Ooh, don't do that," you know. And my sponsor was like, "Dude, you're just as crazy. You can't like take advantage of anybody, you know. Did she do a 5th step?" And I was like, "Yeah." She raised her hand in the meeting, and then the next week she's like, "I'm going to write my 4th step." And I was like, "What?" You know, confused. She was confused. Everybody was confused. But we were dating, and you know, and that's crazy. We've been together for 16 years. We're married for over 10 years now. You know, and man, our life got beautiful. God, it got good real fast. We were just plugged into AA, and you know, we got our own place. I got like a car, my driver's license. I had called up the state of South Carolina because I had to drive through there, and I was worried about going to jail. And they said, you know, hey, you didn't get a letter or anything? And I was like, for what? And they said, we're reading some like transcripts here, and this cop wrote a letter to a judge, and this judge was moved, and this judge wrote a letter to the governor, and the state of South Carolina pardoned you of all your crimes. And I was like, I'm still not speeding, you know, like I'm going to take my time today. And we went to South Carolina on a vacation, you know, and it still sucks, but I went, you know, and it was free. But, you know, like we had the life that AA gives you if you're active in AA. Everything. We even had custody of that kid that I couldn't show up for. I'm coaching his football teams and, you know, pissing off parents and all kinds of stuff. And we had bid for 4 years for this young people's conference, and we finally got it. And I was the voice of the conference, so I was like the first guy to go to the microphone, and I'm standing up on that stage. There's like 1,200 way too caffeinated young people, you know. And we have this sound system that's like way too much for the room. And there's so much energy and love and enthusiasm for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think to myself, you're not an alcoholic. Why are you here? And it was like different. Such a scary thought, man. Like the thought set in with like a grip. It like had a foundation in my mind, you know. And I'm like, I see these guys picking up chips tonight. I'm no different than them. I get that thought today. You're doing great. You don't need this AA. But today it just like goes in faster than it came, right? It's just gone. I've been restored to sanity. And at that moment in time, I wasn't restored to sanity because I was backing out of AA, man. I wasn't calling my sponsor as much. I wasn't going to those detox commitments anymore. I wasn't showing up to as many meetings. I wasn't answering the phone when my guys called me. Like, I was just slowly backing out, and I had no idea. And I kept that thought to myself for the next 6 months. And if you think that there's any mental defense against alcoholism, I'm here to tell you, it might take some time, but alcoholism wins every time. I can drink again today just as I did then. And after 6 months of thinking about it, we had the most beautiful wedding. I don't care what your opinion is. We had the best AA wedding ever, right? And we didn't invite first cousins, right? We were like, no, we want the people from our home group there. There was relationships kindled that led to marriages and children and all kinds of stuff, man. Like, we had an amazing wedding. And a month later, I came home with a six-pack. And I sat on the back porch and I drank. Here's the crazy thing. Nothing bad happened. Brushed my teeth, put a movie on, went to bed. Did it again a few more times, and my wife said, hey, it's making me a little uncomfortable. Would you mind stopping? And I was like, yeah, I'm not alcoholic, no problem, you know? And then we went out to Soho on St. Patty's Day with some of her friends, and I ordered a drink, and she's like, what the hell? I was like, you can't take me to Soho on St. Patty's. Come on, man, what are we talking about? This is crazy, you know? But I'm not alcoholic, you know? And then I go out of town, and Terry shows up, right? Now she's not there to watch. I don't got to report to nobody. And woo, buddy, did I? I had some amends to make after that one, you know? And, I wake up in a bathtub, 3 a.m., don't know how I got there. And I call a guy from AA, and I'm like, hey, man, think I got a problem. And he, I don't know what he was thinking. I love this guy. He was one of the Ryans. But he said, just chalk it up to the game, kid. Bad night. That's all. And I was like, sounds good. You know? Say less, Ryan. And but then it happened again 2 months later. Same exact thing. And I was like, bro, this is bad. And I got 12-step by the Miami Young People's Group. All of them. They took me to a celebration dinner that night. They tricked me. They lied to me. And I smoked 6,000 cigarettes at this dinner. And everybody, gave me their message of experience, strength, and hope. And it was going in one ear and out the other. And this guy got me on the way out. This cat couldn't stay sober to save his life. He'd come up here and he'd get sober with his parents and sober up for a few months and move back down to Miami. And around 6 months, he'd go back out and move back to Tampa and call me at 3 a.m. and say they're outside. And I'm like, who? And he's like, them, And I'm like, Matthias, you got to chill, dude. Like, whatever you're doing ain't good. And we're walking out. And Matthias said, man, this last time, my ego almost got me out there and I was going to die. And I knew that's all it was. It was my ego. And I picked up a white chip at Club Yana the next day. Called my sponsor. And he let me know his little 6-month-old baby was on the way out. And I had been to the hospital the whole time she was in there. I wasn't even sober. And I was in the hospital watching it. And I was watching all these people pray, man. These women would pray for hours. And 4 days later, that little girl left us. And, man, there ain't no God. I don't want to hear nothing about God. And I sat down to do a fifth step with him, and I said, man, the first resentment I had was the idea that I need a higher power to stay sober. I'm not trying to hear nothing about no God. Don't bring it to me. And he said he felt the same way, and I was sure they were going to kick him out of Alcoholics Anonymous. He was sober for 14 years at that point in time, or somewhere around there. You can't talk like that when you're sober that long. But he had an idea, man. His experience taught him to be creative in sobriety, and he said, why don't we seek a higher power together? And I think for the last 9.5 or so years, that's what we've been doing. And I don't know if I found one, but I found one. That makes sense? Oh, if that makes sense. I pray my ass off today, man. And I had this overwhelming sense that it's just going to be okay. And there's been some stuff that just wasn't okay. I watched that little boy get sentenced to prison twice. And the second time, it was my fault. I made him break into them cars. He wanted to be just like his dad, except they got ring cameras now. And he went off to do 18 months in a maximum security juvenile prison. He said, I don't ever want to talk to you again. And my wife and the people in AA held me up, man. And my wife's mom's awesome. She killed a guy. She wasn't supposed to be driving and hit a guy on a bicycle. And a few months later, I found myself on a dive boat going scuba diving, and they paired me up with a stranger, and I'm talking to the stranger, and the stranger's that guy's best friend. And he hadn't dove in 6 months, and me and that guy had one of the coolest dives of our life. We had a bull shark follow us for a little while. He took me inside of a wreck at 140 feet deep. I got concerned. I didn't know my way around that wreck, but he brought me back out of there alive, and boy, did we hug it out. Holy smokes. We moved a meth head in that was detoxing 6 days before Mayor of Tampa gave us the lockdown orders for COVID. We were stuck inside with him. Remember that? That was crazy. He had ideas, boy. He was thinking. I took a road trip with my son up to New York, and we made some stops along the way. This one's going to be messy. Just be patient. We stopped in Philadelphia on the way back, and we're hanging out with my aunt, and my uncle's there, and my cousins are there. And the last night, they don't really know me sober. This is like a foreign thing to them. And I had the money to make financial amends to my uncle who had given me enough money to get my apartment in Philadelphia. And he said, "Nah, man, you're good. Don't do that. I just want you to keep doing what you're doing." I was like, all right, call my sponsor. I don't think we ever figured that out. But I called Uncle Joe. And I said, hey, I'm going to come by and see you guys, And they live 20 minutes away or so. And I asked about my cousin, Shy, who was, she was my cousin. And he said, yeah, Aunt Sue said, why don't you just come over, we'll talk. And I got there, and Aunt Sue was outside, and she didn't look good, man. And she let me know that Shy had passed away a week ago from this thing. And we cried it out. And I was overwhelmed with anger, just full of rage. And Uncle Joe came, and he said, I need you to do me a favor. And I said, what do you need? He said, when you get back to Tampa, I need you to go pick this kid up. And I need you to get him Alcoholics Anonymous. I need you to get him help. I said, all right, man, whatever. And I drove back to Tampa, and I dropped my kid off. I pretty much took a shower and got right back in the car. And I drove up here to Newport Richie, and this, just sack of skin and bones crawled in my car. And he couldn't say 2 words. And I let him know that I was not here to play games, And I brought him to you guys. That guy sitting in this room 8.5 years sober today. I can't thank you enough for the peace and comfort that gave Uncle Joe and Aunt Sue. For the peace it gave me. Right? I've seen the most miraculous things happen here. I was a few years sober, maybe 5 years sober, and I didn't, I was in a bad place. I wasn't doing good, man. My head was not on right. And I get a FaceTime call from Lloyd. Lloyd's riding a bicycle up in Jacksonville, Florida, looking like an absolute psychopath. And he said, I picked up a white chip. I can't wait to sit next to you in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the guy that saved my life was asking me for help. And I watched my group put that guy's life back together. And I've watched this happen over and over and over and over. And when the hurricanes came through, we lost our home, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And a guy from AA came and said, why don't you rent our house? Why don't you rent my house out? It's expensive. And I was like, yeah. And I went home, my wife and I talked about it, and this idea about moving some newcomers in on the other side of the house came up, and I was like, babe, I'm 40. I don't know if I'm built for that anymore. And we had the sweetest little girl already living with us. We had a built-in roommate there. We had a guy that Isaac and I had found in a detox who was getting back on his feet and was in a halfway house. And we went to him and we moved him in. And then I was at a meeting on a Wednesday night, and I didn't know who the last person was going to be. And this surfer dude just went bebopping by, and I was like, what's up, man? And conversation was quick, man, but he moved in. And I'll tell you this, man, that experience has absolutely been the most beautiful thing I've ever had happen to me. I've gotten to watch all of them just grow miraculously. And we've gone and pulled one of them out of trap houses and side of the road. She's here with me tonight. And I can't ask for anything more beautiful than somebody getting sober in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. You guys gave me all that. Thank you so much.